G'day members and welcome to the forum. I thought given a lot of concerns by some of the members that the PDF instructions for loading the modules for ATS24 were quite difficult to decipher, I thought it best to actually run a series of videos for the forum members specifically on the ATS24 process. So the ATS24 process is the latest incarnation. We've gone through 24 of them to get to where we are in developing a comprehensive workflow process to develop a portfolio of trend following strategies using CFDs. We've done quite a few videos for the ATS22 series, which you'll find on YouTube. But there is a lot of information in there that's still relevant for ATS24, but ATS24 has simplified some of the processes. So Fred's been very busy on that and also made it far more practically implementable to fast track the process once it's all set up. So when you start this process, your time is invested in setting it up and creating what we call set files for each step of the process. But then what that allows you to do, even though it's a fairly time-intensive process to set all of these things up, which we'll be going through in this video series, each year you come back to revisit your workflow process, or it might be each 6 months, however often you want to revisit the workflow process. Those set files are the basis to really quickly undertake this process again and again and again, ensuring it's a seamless and very quick process to do. So in the setup phase, what we'll be going through for the video process, it might take a few days to get this all set up correctly. However, on an ongoing basis each year, you'll find that the process itself is a lot quicker than, for instance, the process undertaken in SQX to do a similar process. So let's get straight into it. So the first thing we're going to be looking at is, before we even start our process, the most critical thing to do is ensure we've got sufficient data history, as we require lots of data to undertake this intensive portfolio comprehensive process. And for the particular purposes of our trend following models, we're only interested in daily data. So when a new user comes to a particular broker, they'll notice that the broker usually provides them a fairly limited range of daily data. And obviously, for using these models, the greater the amount of data that you have, the longer term nature of the data you have, the more regimes it reflects over the course of time, the better is going to be our workflow process. So we've provided in our forum, which I'll go to now. So in the download section of the forum, you'll see historical data for long-range testing. If you click on that, we want to go to page 1 because the data is on the very first post. So what we do is we click here and we select number 1, which brings us to the first page. And here you'll notice that there's a zip file containing a lot of long-range data that was put up on the forum on the 24th of June 2022. Download that by clicking on it. When you refer to the download section after you've clicked that button and downloaded it, you'll notice a zip file is now in your download directory. Now what you want to do is extract that zip file. You'll notice that we've got data for all of these particular instruments in the Pepperstone listing. Now, it's important to note that if you are a retail trader, you might have slightly different descriptions of these markets, where Pepperstone put a retail description for that particular market. These are actually descriptions for professional traders, but if you're a retail trader, the symbol might be notated slightly differently. Don't worry about that. The underlying data will still be the same for the retail trader and the professional trader, because it's only open, high, low, close data on the day. So you can use this data even if you're a retail trader. So you'll notice in here, if I open up AUD CAD, you'll notice that it's notated AUD CAD 1440. That means it's daily data, D1, and that's because the daily data has 1440 minutes in a daily bar. Now, when we open up AUD-CAD, you'll notice that we've got history back to 16th of the 12th, 1983, up to that date we downloaded on the forum. So each one of those particular data sets described here has long-range data of varying lengths, some down to 1971, like Euro USD, for instance. If we go into Euro USD, you'll notice that that goes all the way back to 1971. And in the early days, there was only a closing price, so the open, high, low, close is treated as the same, but it is still useful for backtesting on our models, because our models only work on the daily open, which will be reflected by the daily close. Now, even though the sources for this data might have come from different sources apart from Pepperstone, just bear in mind that the variation between brokers is not significantly material for the nature of our trend following process. The nature of our models is what we call medium to long term, and the small variations between the data sets of different brokers is not material for our process. And that's because the trends we take might last 6 months up to a few years, and small variations in the data between the broker data sources is not going to materially impact your strategy. I've actually got numerous videos on the forum in relation to that, where we look at different brokers using, for instance, Dukascopy, Pepperstone, etc., different brokers, and you'll see that the material variation between the equity curves produced by our strategies, our medium to long-term strategies, does not create a significant material variation. So it's worthwhile using this long-term data, even if it is not from your specific broker's data source. So that means, how do we do this? So let's have a look at this. So you'll notice when you go to your Pepperstone or your broker's data on MT4, to find the history that's in your broker's data, go to Tools, go to History Center. And here we'll notice that we've got all of these different groupings for the broker. And in this instance, if we go into, for instance, FX majors, we'll see that we've got data for 6 FX majors. And in this case, we're interested, let's say, for Euro USD. So let's double click on that. Now, we're only interested in the daily data. This is the data that we'll be testing for our entire workflow process. So double click on that and have a look at the extent of the daily data you've got. You might only have 15 or so years. Now, the first thing to know is retain the data that's already there from your particular broker. So you might have, say, let's say 15 years of data. So the first thing you want to do is you want to export your existing data set by clicking the export button. Now, what it's going to do is it's going to give it the notation of the symbol and the 1440. Keep that, that's important to specify it, but you want to save it somewhere where you can access it and use that data. So what I've done, I've created a directory in my ATS called Pepperstone Data. And you'll notice here that I've got my Euro USD. I save my Euro USD into this directory. So I'm just going to now go save, and it's going to overwrite the existing data. I go yes. Okay, so that now means that my entire data that's currently represented by my broker, that's in this history, is now saved to that CSV file. So then what you want to do is you want to open up that data. So I'm just going to go into here now, and I'm going to go into my Pepperstone data. Here we go. Here's my Pepperstone data, and I want to open up the Pepperstone data that I just downloaded into this CSV file format. So from my broker's data, let's go to the earliest date. I'll see that in this instance for my broker, it's given me data on a daily basis, open, high, low, close, back to 2001 06.12, or the 12th of the 6th, 2001. Now, I want longer range data than this. So I want that data that I've downloaded from the forum to append to this model. I don't want to overwrite this most recent broker's data because that's useful, being the actual broker's data I'm going to be trading on, but I certainly want the longer history provided by the forum to append to this data. So how do I do that? So looking at our broker data, for example, from Pepperstone, the earliest date I've got is 2001-06-12, and this is the open, high, low, close data, and this is the volume data, and this is the time. So now what I want to do is look at my forum download and see the structure of that. So I'll go to my forum version and I'll see that I've got data from 1971-01-04, open, high, low, close, volume, time. So when I look at my forum data, I see I'm from 1971-01-04. Let's go to the date where my broker's data commences from. So I'm going to scroll down my forum data until I get to, it was 2001-06-12. Let's go to this date of my download. So I've just highlighted the row that is the commencement point for my broker's data in relation to this forum data, and that's the row. Now I go to my broker's data. I'm just going to copy this row, the first row, to cross-compare it against the data from the forum. So I go back to that forum data, and in the same row, I'm just going to paste over here the data that I've got from my broker's data. And now I'm going to look at the open, high, low, close and compare it to the open, high, low, close here. In this instance, it's exactly the same. But even if there is a small material variation, don't worry about it. The thing is, it does need to be normalized for Euro USD because the different instruments or CFDs will have different pricing levels. You just got to make sure it's similar. But if there is a small variation, 2 to 3% or whatever, don't worry about it because the future is never going to be the same as the past. And the past data is very valuable to us because it allows us to test our models over many more different regimes than what is presented by the shorter term historical data set provided by your broker. So now that we're comfortable with that data provided by the broker, we want to go to our broker's data and we now want to append our broker's data over the forum data from this day going forward. Let's go to our broker's data, and now what we want to do is highlight our broker's data up to the current day, 21st of the 6th, 2024, Control C. So we're now copying it. And now we go back to our historical data set from the forum, and we now want to overwrite this data, Control V, and that's now overwritten that data. So then as we scroll through, we see that we've got the historical data from our forum, and we've got the broker's data appending onto that. I now want to save this in a format that is now capable of being imported back into MetaTrader to update my historical data in MetaTrader. But before I do, I want to delete that working I did where I was comparing the data because we want to make sure that this CSV format is able to be imported back into MetaTrader. There it is. That is the data I now want to delete. So now I want to save this in a format that's capable of being imported back into MetaTrader. Now we remember when we exported our data out of MetaTrader, it was calling it EURUSD 1440.csv. We want to therefore save this file, save as. So now I want to save this file. I save it in the format, the CSV format, which is down here. And I want to overwrite my exported file that I took from MetaTrader here. So that's now going to be saving it correctly. I go save, and it says, do you want to replace it? And I go, yes. So now that's saved that file. Now what I want to do is import it back into MetaTrader. So let's go to MetaTrader. I'm going to it here. Go to the tools, go to history. I go to EURUSD, the daily. Now the first thing I want to do is I want to delete all of the files that's currently in this history because I want to now import the file back that I've just created. So I go delete and delete all references, delete. So now I want to import that file I've created. So I find it and it's down here, EURUSD, this one here, open, And now it's going to import it back, and it's already putting it into the desired format that we want it in. And I notice as I'm scrolling through that I have from current day right back to 1971. I select OK, and now my history has been updated. So that when I now look at a chart of Euro USD, which I've now got on my screen, I notice that the chart now goes all the way back to 1971. But notice how we only had the close of this data in the first 10 years, but it still plots effectively as a line graph over this period of time. But we notice that when we get to around about 1985 or so, we start getting all of the open high-low closes for the data. But that earlier data can still be used by our models as trend following data. So there we go. It's now done for one instrument. So clearly we need to do this process for all of the instruments that we want to test in our universe for ATS24. So using the forum data as historical data, make sure you're using extensive data sets and you might need to use other sources if you're trading instruments that we haven't provided the historical data for. But have a look around and see if you can get your hands on data. Check that the data is similar to the data that you've currently got from your brokers to ensure it's normalized to that data. But if there is a small variance, don't be so concerned. But it provides a really good additional data set to increase your sample size to test the robustness of your models. So that's it for this, the first step of this ATS24 process, which is the collection and collation of data that we then want to test with our ATS24 process. Looking forward to seeing you in the next video where we commence ATS24 looking at the symbol generation process. So take care.